Hi everyone, welcome back to the NSSR with your host MÍtalks, encouraging you to run your own race to medicine one day at a time. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A video from last week, but in this video, what we're going to do is actually answer the leftover questions from that session. Let's go into it. I'm not a pre-med advisor. I'm not a medical school advisor by any means. I'm just a medical student that cares about lifting up the people coming up behind me. So I always say it's good to have the opinion of multiple people whenever you're considering a big decision or have any questions at all. You can't overstate the value of advisors enough. So definitely seek help. All right, let's get into the first question. It says, what were some pros and cons you had listed when deciding which med schools to attend? So I'm assuming this is after acceptances. The main things that for me were listed were the goals of the medical school. Am I someone who wants to go into education? Is this an academic center that focuses on scholarly activity, research, what have you? Am I somebody that really cares about serving my community and serving the underserved? Is this a medical school that prepares me well for that? Are there opportunities to do that during medical school? Am I someone that wants to serve a rural setting? There are many people that want to go back to their hometowns and serve. Is this a medical school that will prepare me for the situations that I will face being a rural physician? Am I someone that cares about the urban population? Is this a school that's going to help me accomplish that? So many different factors when it comes to the goal of the school marrying up with your goals as a physician. The other thing that I was thinking about was location. Do I want to stay near family? Do I want to stay in a specific region of the US? Am I tethered to anything in any particular place, or can I go wherever? These are questions that you have to ask yourself. We have to talk about where the money resides, finances, and whether or not a school can support you, and if so, to what degree. Medical school debt is a real thing, and so trying to mitigate that as much as possible on the front end is also something that many people rightfully think about. And the last thing too is, where do you feel like you will be the most happy? Your interview day will give you some sense of what this facility is like, what this institution is like, what the people are like, and that should give you a sense of, will I be happy here? Do I mesh well with these people that I saw in interview? Do the people who are not on interview seem happy? Because that's one thing you have to think about. If the people that are on the interview day with you, as in the school's people, seem happy, but you go around and everybody else is kind of rushed or competitive or hostile, it gives you a sense of what is the real face of this place. And even in this virtual era, I advise people to go on social media. If there's a student that says they go to X school and that's where you want to go, DM them, of course, like I always say, be professional, and ask, what has your experience at this school been? Many people are happy to tell you, for good or bad, what their experience has been. And so that way you can compare, is what I saw on interview day marrying up with what I'm seeing in real life with these people? I hope that made sense. The second question says, what should I focus on when it comes to making a school list before the application cycle opens? So this is the corollary to that first question, right? And it's much of the same, actually. Reflecting on who you are as a person and what you bring to the table will really help with making a school list. Who you are, what goals do you have? Where do you want to be as a physician? What kind of physician do you see yourself being? You don't necessarily have to know your specialty, but you do need to have some sense of, 5 to 10 years, where do I see myself? What do I see myself doing? And you kind of marry that with the type of medical school that you want to go into. Also, like I said before, location, where do you want to be? What regions of the country are you looking at? Maybe even outside the US, looking at that situation, the financial situation as well, in the sense of, what do you have the money to apply to? And also, where are you applying to that will give you some money back? So there's two sides to that coin, and I highly encourage you to think about both when you're applying. The next question says, what are some tips that you have to stay motivated? This is a great question. It applies regardless of where you are on the spectrum of this medical journey. I think for me, speaking personally, the one thing I would advise is to stay spiritually grounded. I have figured out by trial and error that, when I'm not spiritually sound, nothing else in my life is. For me, that is prayer, to reading my Bible, to fellowship, going to church regularly does wonders for my mental health. Who knew? Then also, I would say stay socially connected as well. And what do I mean? Everybody has, or at least they should have, some sort of support system. Is it your family? Is it your close friends from undergrad? Is it your work buddies? Whatever. Have that source of social support and stay tethered to them. Keep in touch regularly. If it's calling your mom every week or every day to check in, if it's calling your best friend and talking to them about the weird medical stuff that you went through today, even if they don't understand, or hearing something that's non-medical from a friend or family member will be the highlight sometimes of your day. And so having that connection to other people is key for you to feel like, I'm not alone in this, because we tend to isolate whenever we get into situations that are out of our control or something that, is just not going well. And so staying tethered to other people is very key. The other thing that I would say is, and this is a big one, especially in medical school and also preparing for medical school, because let's be real, pre-med is competitive at times. And I would say this would be minimize the people and or situations and or things that induce stress. What do I mean? Some people are stressful, okay? Some people are very stressful. They will come ask you after an exam, oh, what did you get on that exam? And then they'll start talking about their grade. And you're sitting here like, I'm trying not to freak out about what's going on. And you're sitting here talking about grades, I don't need that kind of stress in my life. Eliminate those people. I didn't say kill them. That's not what I meant. I meant cut them out your life, okay? So if it's that, you need to distance yourself from some people after an exam, do that. If it's that you have to turn your phone off and take a nap after an exam, do that. Even if it's not an exam, when you surround yourself with people that will induce stress, you become more stressed, and nobody needs to be living in hypertension while they're trying to prepare for a career in medicine. So, find those toxic people and stay away from them, or at least minimize contact until you are more sound to be able to be around them. And then also, I think the most important thing too is speak up. You are inevitably going to be in situations where things are out of your control, things are not going well, you need help and you feel overwhelmed. Please speak up. Too many people on this journey to medicine become depressed and don't seek help for it. Too many people end up committing suicide, and we learn after the fact that they were going through so much. Please speak up. If you need help, go to your professor and say, hey, I'm not understanding this. This is not making sense to me. If you are just overwhelmed with what's happening around you, have that one person where you could call and say, hey, I need help. I can't do this. This is not going well. It is feeling too much. And as usual, there's also the suicide prevention hotline that I highly, highly encourage you to reach out to if you ever feel like things are hopeless and there's no help, there's no escape, because I'm a big advocate for suicide prevention, and I'm a big advocate for we do not need to lose any more of our brothers and sisters to suicide, and we need to help each other. So definitely reach out if there's no one else to call, if you're in a bind, etc. And just to be really honest, I feel like I say these things and everybody's like, yeah, we know. But I'll just be very transparent. I failed at many of these things that I just talked about. And I almost crumbled in medical school. I'm going to make a separate video about that and that process and that journey and what it did for me. It's going to come up in a few more weeks, so stay tuned for that. But I got to answer all these questions today, so we're not going into it. The next question is advice for the personal statement and interview. So I'm making a video for both of those coming up very soon, but I will say that the main advice for both is reflection. Reflection, reflection, reflection. If you don't reflect, you cannot articulate your why. And if you cannot articulate your why, both your personal statement and your interview are in trouble. So reflect, sit down with your thoughts, and really figure out why are you doing this. The next question, how did you know medical school was for you? I actually did a video on this. It was one of my first MÍtalks tactics videos called Thinking Deep. And I highly suggest you watch that because it goes through the process of reflecting on whether or not I should be a doctor or why I want to do so. So go back and watch that. The next question says, what should be done during gap years? This is a great question, but it's a hard one to answer because there's so many things that you could be doing during gap years. I am not going to sit here and prescribe to you what you should do. I ultimately believe that you should seek mentors and ultimately do what is best for you. For some people, it means doing research. For some people, it means working to get the money to even apply to medical school or take the MCAT. For some people, it means doing a post-bac to strengthen their GPA. For some people, it means taking a vacation to take care of their kids or their sick loved ones. For some people, it means bumming around Europe and really having the time of their lives because they were so burnt out from undergrad that they need a break to be able to go to medical school. So you see, it could look like anything. What I will say is that what you do doesn't matter as much as how you are able to reflect on and articulate how that's going to help you be a better medical student and eventually a physician. So just keep in mind that whatever you do needs to help you, right? So you can't be doing things that are like counterproductive. But it really looks different for each person. Again, that's the point of this channel. It can be any number of things, right? So do you is the point. The next question says, any tips for overcoming test anxiety prior to med school? I'm actually going to get a physician to talk about test anxiety and standardized testing in a bit. So look out for that video. Another question says, if you could change one thing about your medical school journey, what would it be? This is a great question. And I think what I would do and what I would change is that I maybe wouldn't have gone straight into medical school. Now, mind you, I am very happy to have gone in at the age that I went to because I could stay on my parents' insurance. And also, I got to go through the process a little quicker. But that being said, I wouldn't have gone straight through because I realized in medical school, and actually from interacting with the non-traditional medical students that were my classmates, that I had a lot of growing up to do. I was surprisingly immature going into medical school, and medical school really forced me to grow up. And I think, would it have benefited me to do that growing up in a less stressful setting? Probably. And that's the reason why I say I wouldn't have gone straight through. The other thing that kind of piggybacking off of that, I feel like if I could change one thing about my journey, I would have connected more with people because, as I'll talk about in the video I was telling you about earlier, about my mental health and journey through medical school, is I isolated a lot, and just by nature of circumstances I faced when I grew up and etc., I tended to look inward. And so it was medical school that really taught me the value of relying on other people and what that could do for your well-being. And so I would start earlier connecting with more people. The next question says, as a medical student, how would you describe the best way to study? Again, this is one of those questions and that the answer varies for each person. I cannot by any means prescribe to you how to study. The best way to study is the best way you study. That's all I'm going to say about that. How often did you have quizzes and exams? So this depends both on the school that you go to and the block that you're in. So for me, the way it worked was at our med school, we had a block system. So we had blocks of 4 to 6 weeks. And after each block, we would have an exam in first and second year. And in third year, we had blocks of kind of 4 to 6 weeks as well, some a little shorter. And we would have shelf exams at the end of those. But that looks very different for many schools. Some people take all their exams in the middle of the semester for a bunch of blocks. Some people have there's so many systems. I would highly encourage you when you're interviewing for medical school, or even before that, when you're picking medical schools to apply to, you do that research to find out what that looks like for each school. Another question says, what is a typical day like for a medical student? Again, this is one of those things that also depends on the school you go to and like where you are in the medical school process. So in the first 2 years or 1.5 years for certain schools, you are in didactic mode. And what does that mean? That means that you are being taught in a classroom setting most of the time. So you are, kind of doing your 8 to 12. For some schools, it may be different, but at Mayo, it was 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. classes and as a first year. And then as a second year, your classes were 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. or sorry, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And so when you weren't in class, you either had that time off to study, or sometimes they would have clinical experiences that you could get started on in your preclinical years. So then in third year, you typically have your core rotations. So those are the standard rotations that you need to have experience in medical school to graduate. And so many times it depends on the rotation that you're on. The schedules can be very different. For instance, when I was in surgery, I would be waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning to go to the hospital and coming back in the evening. Whereas when I was on psychiatry, I was walking in around 8 a.m. So it's very, very different for each rotation and each specialty that you're exploring. And so your schedule won't look the same from month to month. In fourth year, it's kind of like third year where you have those rotations, but now some of them are still required, some of them are elective. So you're actually getting to pick what you want to do. And for some people, that means going into their specialty of choice and doing more rotations there. Some people, it means exploring other things that they may not see again after medical school because of the specialty they chose. So again, that looks different for each person. Have you done research while in school? If so, how did you go about asking for research opportunities? This is an excellent question, and I'll answer it both from the pre-med perspective and the medical school perspective. So in the pre-med perspective, I did do research, and to go about asking for it, a lot of the research that I did, I searched on my own. The way I did it, and it worked for me, was to Google the name of the hospital or the school, the med school that I wanted to go to. And then right after that, put summer undergraduate research program, those exact words, or SURP, depending on what you wanted to type in Google. And so that was how I found all of mine. I would typically do the search around Thanksgiving to come up with a list and then start working on my application so I could get my rec letters before Christmas and send that application and then be looking out for responses in the new year. I also did some longitudinal research. The one that I did in particular, there was a program at our university that had a summer research opportunity that I happened to apply for. And I got that program and was able to participate in a biochemistry lab long term. Additionally, you could email professors that you particularly enjoy their lectures or the topic matter and say, hey, I enjoy your class, look up what they research and then see if that meshes with what you're interested in. And then say, hey, I've looked at your research. I was wondering if you had any openings for an undergraduate student. And if they don't, ask them if they know anyone who does, so that way you can kind of network in your university. For those who are already graduated, one thing you could do again is apply for those summer programs, or there are also graduate research programs. I know that Mayo has some where people who have actually graduated from university can still do research in the clinical setting. Additionally, there are clinical research coordinator jobs available where you get in touch with them and get to work on that side of things as well. There's many opportunities available to get plugged into research. From the medical school perspective, it was a little easier for me because one, Mayo has so many opportunities available that some of them almost fall into your lap. And I was very blessed to be able to be at that institution. Sometimes it was as simple as I heard a lecture that I really liked and I was like, hey, what are you doing? How can I get involved? Of course, more professionally than that. But that was kind of how I went about just talking to people. Again, if you wanted to do research in the summer, there's also summer research fellowships that you could do. And I would, again, search the hospital, the institution you wanted to go to, and then put summer research fellowship after it in Google, or you could put medical school research program after that as well. And that's worked pretty well for me so far. The next question says, do med schools accept dual credit and AP courses? And do they look at high school transcripts? So yes and no. So they don't look at high school transcripts per se, in the sense of they'll ask you to go submit it. But if I remember correctly, you have to submit the transcript for every college you went to. So that includes community college, four-year university, what have you. And if you did dual credit and AP courses in high school and got credit for them in college, it will show up as credit on your transcript in university. And so in that way, I guess they do take it, but I would say it's via the college transcript and not the high school transcript. I will say about AP courses and dual credit, I am a giant advocate for them because I believe that they are the biggest way to save yourself time and money in a university, because those courses are expensive. And if you can get them at a cheaper rate, and also kill time too, why not? They also give you a little bit more room if you take a quote unquote non-traditional major, because you have more room for your pre-med prerequisites as well. But if you take a traditional major, a lot of times you get to be able to skip things that you would normally have to do in university because you walk in with that credit. And also, side note, I don't know if anybody else knows this that hasn't been to university yet, but if you walk in with AP credits, you're actually put at a higher level. And when you register for classes every semester, it's based on the number of credits you have. So you actually have a bump in being able to register for your classes ahead of your classmates if you have more credits. So pro tip: how do you find scholarships or financial aid? Excellent question. And I'm going to answer on the presumption that this is for a medical school. There's many ways. So the institution itself will give you some financial aid package. So usually after your acceptance, you will get a financial aid package that says here and here and here is what you qualify for. Many times they have scholarships in that sense based on your MCAT or based on your GPA, what have you. And that's kind of automatic. You don't always have to do anything for that. Some schools have merit scholarships that they're either automatic or you have to apply for them. So definitely be on the lookout for that when you're applying to see if there's any merit scholarships associated with that school. Additionally, there are private scholarships. So if you're in a place that has any organizations, any local clubs, etc., that you are part of, definitely look and see if there are any private scholarships available there. And lastly, pre-med organizations, medical organizations, specialty-related organizations often have scholarships for undergraduate and medical students who are interested in that specialty or that organization. I know things like SNMA, MAPS, things like the Association of Hematology, for instance, they have great scholarships and opportunities for research as well. So that would also be a good place to look for research opportunities too, because they usually have all those things in the same place. Are most medical schools using a PassFail system? I would say many. I cannot confidently say most, just because I don't know all the med schools. But many schools are moving towards a pass-fail system if they haven't already. And that has its advantages and that has its disadvantages. We may do a video on that. We'll see. With regards to pass-fail, these are things to ask about when you're interviewing a med school. Do you have a pass-fail system? Additionally, do you rank? Because some schools will rank you even though they have a pass-fail system. It's only for the first 2 years. And then in the third and fourth year, you are ranked based on your performance in the clinical setting. Things like AOA, things like internal rankings and things like that, percentiles, quartiles, quintiles, whatever, are really important to know about. The next question says, how many credit hours should a pre-med student have each semester in undergrad? This is multifactorial. It depends on the student. It depends on the major that they're doing. It depends on what they've done previously, like have they had AP credits, college level courses before. And it also depends on the institution. So for those reasons, I cannot say you need X semesters of undergrad course credit to be in good standing for pre-med. I can't say that. I would advise you to talk to your pre-med advisor or your university major advisor to figure that out. What could it be like being in medical school with a child? I always joke that I am a child, and so being in med school with myself is quite difficult. But on a serious note, I do not have a child, and so I'm not the best person to speak on that. I did interview my first guest on the show was Kafayat, who had 3 children. And so I would definitely suggest you go back and watch that video. Additionally, I know many people that are parents in medical school, and I'm happy to connect you with them. So reach out to me, DM me, and let's see what we can do. How do you truly find your niche in terms of extracurricular activities and service? And what are the best resources to be used? This is an excellent question, because I know we always talk about, do service, do volunteering as a pre-med, etc. I think that reflecting really on what you already like to do and what comes naturally to you is really important. Pursue your passion, because these are things that are going to help you be a better doctor. For me, I knew from jump that I wanted to teach. I'm big into education, tutoring, what have you. And so when I was going to my extracurricular activities, I naturally gravitated to the opportunities to tutor kids after school, for instance, and like after school activities and things like that. Those were my jam. And so my volunteering activities really reflected that, because I knew that was something that came naturally to me, was something that I was really passionate about. What do I like already? And how can that lend itself to volunteering and service? How do you manage your time? I don't. I'm just kidding. Time management is something that I am seriously still working on. It is, I think, an ever-evolving skill for me. But some tips that I have is, Google Calendar, Outlook calendars have always been my best friend. If it's not on my calendar, it likely didn't happen. As I remember things, I put tasks and to-dos in my calendar because it's been very helpful for me to stay organized, especially with, the med school application process, YouTube, the different other projects that I put myself in. It's been very good for me to have calendars and keep myself updated. I'm also a big fan of to-do lists. It's a different kind of satisfaction where you can just like check off something that you've done. It makes you feel accomplished for the day. So I think those are the two biggest pieces of advice that I would have. Also, I don't do this as much as I should, and it's worked for me whenever I do it. I don't know why I don't do it anymore, but waking up early in the morning is super helpful. Like, the days when I wake up early, I am incredibly productive. The days that I wake up a little bit later, questionable. So wake up early in the morning, have a goal set for the day. Maybe before you go to bed, make a to-do list for yourself for the next day. Those are things that have been very helpful for me. I hope this answers all your questions. Feel free to ask more. I'm always available to do multiple Q&A videos if needed. We will plan another Q&A session soon, so that way you can get to ask more questions in a live format. But until then, stay encouraged, stay energized, stay safe, and have some peace in your life. Once again, this has been the NSSR with your host, MÍtalks. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification bell for more information on this channel and to get regular updates when new things come out.